Hello, 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 and welcome everybody to another episode of the Russ Matthews Show. Thanks for joining me here. Today I have wound up in a not the best position on my back on the hard floor of my kitchen, on this hard tile floor for an hour, just staring at the ceiling. And I thought to myself, isn't that just life? Isn't that just life? Don't you feel like that? Laying on your back, just wishing things didn't have to be the way that they are, wishing that things were a little bit different. That was me today. That was me today. Had a little bit of a challenging afternoon. We can talk about that a little bit. But I've learned, actually, though, have you heard this saying? I've learned that you should never waste a good disaster. Don't waste a good disaster. There could be some good stuff in it for you. And this is something that the government and big corporations have definitely taught me since I've been paying attention to this stuff. Never waste a bad opportunity. A bad opportunity. That doesn't even sound. It sounds like an oxymoron. A bad opportunity. Never, never waste a bad situation. Never even. Don't waste a war. Even. Don't waste a war. There's probably money in it. We're going to talk about that as well, because I'm definitely in my own personal war right now, on that hard tile, laying on my back. Not how I expected the day to go. Let me tell you what I've been up to. Maybe this is about like a week and a half ago. My fiance, she's a shift worker, and she wakes up at like 5 a.m. For this shift cycle that she's on. She wakes up and is about to say bye to me. I'm like half awake, like kind of like groggy, right? And just like, here, say, Russ, get up. You got to get up. You got to come in here. I'm thinking that someone's in the house or something like that. And she's like, I just saw something. I'm like, oh shit. What could this be? What in the world could this be? So I get up and I have like in a room across from, actually like in this room, in a room across from my bedroom. I get up. I'm like, I'm wearing these shorts and topless and just groggy as all get out. And I walk into the office and I grab my little golf club with a training grip on it, thinking like, this is really going to solve my issues. This is going to be my poker to get rid of whatever it is. And she says, oh, it's gone. It's gone. She says she saw something out of the corner of her eye as she flipped off the lights just run across the room. Something. I'm like, what are you talking about? Is it big? Is this She said it's some sort of critter. So I'm looking all around. I see no signs of it. Just looking in all the corners, nothing in the living room, looking under the couch, all this stuff, nothing. So I'm like, okay, maybe she's seeing something. Maybe she, and she's like, oh, I don't know. I just woke up too. It could have been something in my eye. I was just turning the lights off. So I stopped thinking about it. I'm like, okay, I'll take a look. I'll keep my eye out. Maybe we'll see something. This morning, I decided, okay, let me take a closer look around and let's see what's going on. But I found some evidence that maybe she wasn't all that crazy in the end. Found a little bit of evidence that it was a mouse just chilling at my place. So I spent today dealing with that, going to Home Depot, running to Home Depot, getting all kinds of steel wool and expanding foam and all this stuff to try to get rid of the, like, I don't want any more roommates. I've been through that time in my life. I got a place to try to not have roommates anymore, especially unwelcome ones, and now we're dealing with potentially multiple. And I'm laying on my back on the hard tile floor with his little caulking gun trying to close up every single hole in my house that I haven't been able to close up yet. And I'm thinking to myself, this is life, this is the world, and this is also home ownership. Especially today in Canada, this is what home ownership feels like. Throwing your back out and laying on the ground. This is the high life, actually. This is the good life where this is what we're paying 6.5% interest on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. This is the good life. Living with mice, laying on your back on the tile floor in the middle of a Friday, and just like getting foam sealant all over your body. This is life, and this is the world. This is life, and this is the world. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What you're gonna do is you're gonna suck it up, folks, and you're gonna lay on the ground, and you're gonna do what you gotta do in this world. You're gonna do what you've got to do. You know who did do what he had to do this week? I don't know if you saw this clip. It was making the rounds. It's wild. It reminded me of well, it was a politician, a Canadian politician. You know the guy. But it reminded me of something from that I haven't seen since maybe the seventh grade, sixth grade, something that like you ever go to those like you have the middle schooler school photo shoots, right? Where you have picture day, everyone's like coming in one at a time, and they do the individual ones, right? But they also have the ones where the whole class files in, and there's a big lineup. You got 30 kids in there, and the teachers are just like trying to get through it, trying to pour another shot of Jameson in their coffee in their mug, hoping that the principal doesn't find out this is what they've got to do to get through the day, every single day. And that shot of Jameson is getting a little bit bigger every single morning. That's all the teacher's trying to do. But they're shuttling these kids in and trying to get them to be still for 30 seconds so they can take a big picture. And inevitably, one of those kids is going to yell exactly when you think you've gotten everybody settled, is going to yell out something random like, I don't even know, something random like I've got 9 feet, and just trying to get a laugh. And that would actually be a good example of one that probably wouldn't get a laugh from people. And this is what it reminded me of. A kid trying to get attention. Nobody was really all that into it. Everyone was just more confused about it. You said you had 9 feet. I can see you have 2 feet. I don't know what you're talking about here. But this is what this clip reminded me of today, because we just saw a gathering of some of the world's biggest politicians. I believe it was the G7, and they also had a sort of side session. I believe this was the Summit on Peace in the Ukraine, or it was Summit on Peace in Ukraine. I don't know if you have the or if you don't have the these days. But on Summit for Peace on Ukraine, and our dear leader, Daddy Trudeau, got a little bit of attention. So I'll describe this scene for you. Let me flip over here for the people who are just listening, and I'll describe what's happening here. And if you're watching on YouTube, then we're going to zoom in here, because we have the same sort of everyone lining up, teachers trying to corral everybody in a line, just trying to get the picture, and get out of there. They've probably been in boring meetings. Honestly, that's probably what a lot of them are thinking. Been in boring meetings for 3 days now. Let's just get the picture and get out. But we have an attention seeker here. Everyone's sort of just like lined up here. If you're just listening, we've got probably we only see the shot of about maybe like the 20 people, but it expands farther off screen, and there's probably about like 40 people here. And right when they're all about to say cheese and take this picture with the Ukrainian president or prime minister, and all of these world leaders at this summit, we hear Trudeau make that 9 feet joke, try to get a little bit of attention. They're all just, yeah, you just let me play that again. This is everyone silent for this image, and we hear a big long live Ukraine, Slava Ukraine from Trudeau. Everyone looks over like, who even just said that? We're just trying to get a picture and get out of here, my guy. I thought it was an interesting clip. I mean, I'm not upset about it. It just seems like an embarrassing moment, right? An embarrassing moment like me is trying to say that the 9 foot thing was a funny thing for a middle schooler to say. An embarrassing moment like that with all of the other world leaders. It really did feel like that awkward middle school moment where you're carting everyone in and you're just trying to get attention because you're not getting it at home, or maybe you're getting it in the wrong way at home back in Canada in this case. But this is to not say anything about the situation here, the situation with the war in Ukraine. Hell, I have no idea. If you have gotten the impression that through watching my videos that I'm some sort of expert in geopolitics, I assure you I'm not. I follow things as much as anyone else does, maybe a little bit more, because I make the videos about this kind of stuff, but I'm not some person who has like a doctorate in the history of Russia and the region. I think you'll get a lot of other YouTubers and people talking about like this, like they know what's going on, or like they claim to actually know what's going on here and know who's right. I think that it's just both sides of these types of people are pretty crazy, kind of batshit crazy, kind of mouse shit crazy. That would be my morning. Both sides are insane. You got people who have never thought about Ukraine once in their life, and all of a sudden, when this war started, they've got lawn signs supporting Ukraine and just saying like, okay, I've been told what I need to think about this, so I'm gonna support this. I'm not saying don't support. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be supported, right? That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm calling out the insanity of people not knowing anything about what's going on, myself included, but I'm not putting out a lawn sign about something that I don't understand. But you have people on the exact sort of other side saying, hey, you know what? Like I watched that Tucker Carlson interview with Putin, and he seemed like a pretty smart guy, so I know what's up, and probably we should get out of Ukraine. We should probably get out of that. He was on Tucker Carlson. I heard he had a Zin in his bottom lip. Maybe he was rocking an upper decky. That seems pretty cool to me. So that's my position on the war. You got people that think that they know what's going on when nobody does, myself included. But it's not new. It's not new stuff we're talking about here. If you've had your eyes open at any point in the past decade, it happens all the time. You've seen this. And it happened. It's almost like we're just getting reruns now. We're getting reruns. They've got different skins. We're getting remakes. Everything's a Marvel movie that we've seen it before. We've seen this happen before. I saw the Moana 2. I went to the movies yesterday. Saw the preview in the theater. I didn't even see the first one. I saw a crappy middle school play version of it, and that's my full understanding of what the story was about. But like, do we really have to do the sequels all the time? Do we really have to do that? But it seems like everything is a repeat, even in life and even in these bigger things, or seemingly bigger things, like the geopolitics that we're talking about here, because we're smart people, the people listening to this show. If you can put up with me talking shit for an hour here, I got to question how many brain cells you've got. I've certainly lost a few. What am I saying here? It's reruns, right? We've seen this all before. We've got people on both sides that don't understand what they're talking about and act like they do. And we'll see like an issue will pop up, a big world issue that everyone's starting to talk about. And then all of a sudden, switch flips and people decide to make their entire identity about whatever this issue is for weeks, for 3 whole weeks of their life. This is the most important thing to them. And then eventually, well, they're like, okay, well, I can have my Ukraine lawn sign, but my landlord might be pissed that it's up there. Or hey, if I got to take that lawn sign out when I'm mowing my lawn, do I really support the Ukraine enough to take that out every single time and mow over, like to be able to mow in that spot? That's a new level of support for Ukraine, that you would like get a lawn sign out, lay it down and put it back in each time. I'm thinking most people took it down after a few weeks, after they let their grass grow to their knees, because they didn't want to take out the sign. But they have people make it their identity for weeks and weeks on end, without ever having thought about whatever they're tied up in for the moment before in their lives. They never have even thought about something, and now it's all that they care about. And if you disagree with them, if you disagree with their opinion on something, or even say, hey, I'm not so sure, I don't know what's going on here, I'm not an expert in this, they'll say, well, you're probably a xenophobic, racist, a Nazi then, probably, if you don't see things like I see them. if you're still mowing your lawn at regular intervals, probably a Nazi. This is what they say. But they make it their identity for weeks and weeks on end. And like, honestly, I don't blame these people. I think that I don't think it's about the issue. Don't think it's about the issue that they're talking about. I think it's probably bigger than that, right? It's kind of sad when you think about it. Because, like, what do we really have in this life to connect with other people about? There's no sense of community anymore, right? I feel this, like I'm not a very religious person at all. I went to church when I was a kid, and I think a lot more people like had some sort of faith in the past, a group of people that they could go and be around, and that they could maybe feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves for just a moment, even if it's one day a week or whatever, right? We had lots of these sort of opportunities in decades past before the internet. The internet was this thing that was supposed to connect us with people all around the world, and was supposed to make us feel more connected as a species and as a people. But it really has just gone the opposite way, right? That nobody leaves their house. Just stay in their house, lay on their back on the tile floor. Even they don't even have any mice. They're just hitting the vape pen and laying on the tile floor because that's the only cold place in their house. Yeah, people don't leave their house, and they don't have a community of people to be around. Like, I'm bad for this too. Like, I barely know my neighbors. Do you know your neighbors in your area? You might know a couple of them. I remember when I was a kid, we used to have like big block parties, right? We used to have every Christmas. Everyone would go out and we'd all turn on our Christmas lights at the same time, and everyone would go out, and all the kids we'd block off the yard. We didn't ask for a permit or anything like that. The city didn't care. Nobody reported it. Nobody was that anal about it. We blocked off the roads, and everyone got to enjoy themselves for a little bit and get together with the community, the people that directly lived around them, and got to hang out together. You have the kids just running around. Parents don't know where they are. They're just somewhere on the street. They trust all the parents, right? They don't think that their kid's going to get kidnapped the second that they don't lay eyes on them. They don't think that, like, they even, okay, some people even had a table set up with all these little cups, and they were giving out apple cider and hot chocolate and all that. It was wonderful, right? This is what I remember from my childhood. These days, people would be thinking, okay, well, what kind of poison are these people, these savages that I barely know, putting into my kids' drinks? I don't even trust them to do. Like, we don't have that kind of trust in the people that are around us. We don't have this sense of community where we feel like we're a part of something bigger, even if it's just for these small events. You're just going to church once a week, or participating in any faith, right? I don't think that there's a lot of that sense of community. The internet hasn't helped, even though it promised to, right? I don't think, well, like we see like sort of sub communities on Reddit or stuff come out from that. We got people want to feel like they're at the start of something, feel like they're in something. There's people like the incels. They're certainly not inside of anything else other than that community, right? They're not inside of anything else. But they're in that community. They probably don't have a lot of people in the real world that they're a part of. But this is everybody. We don't leave our houses, and we don't have this sense of community anymore. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of this is about. You have, it's like fashion, right? Political fashion or social justice fashion. Like, I want to feel like I'm a part of something. So I'm going to join this group of people that I think kind of believe the same sort of things as me, but ultimately the issue doesn't matter as much, and there'll be a new issue in a year that we're going to get behind, but it's going to give us a collective feeling. It's going to feel like we're all part of the same thing. We're all part of the same team, right? We're all in this together, and then these are the issues. And I think it's happening a lot. It's not just people on one political side or the other political side. Like, I think honestly it was probably very similar thing with the whole trucker convoy, right? there were some loose desires that everyone shared, like maybe a skepticism of vaccines and not wanting the economy to be shut down in the way that it was, right? That's ultimately what the protests were about. I think that you have all the individuals sort of claiming they're there for different reasons. It probably wasn't as focused as just that. But ultimately, I think it's probably more about being a part of something bigger than themselves in a world where these people just feel alone, right? Like, sure, like they'll say like fuck Trudeau and they'll have these slogans and hey, let's have a catchy slogan, let's axe the tax, and then we're all going to feel like we're all rowing in the same direction, right? But people want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, and I think that's what it was. I think it was like, well, we're going to protest in Ottawa, and we believe these things, sure, but also it feels good for once to be with a group of people with a shared values and spending time with them and feeling like I'm bigger than something, bigger than myself, right? I'm bigger than me sitting at home feeling like I'm never going to be able to make enough money to have the same kind of quality of life that my parents or my grandparents did. I've been sitting at home alone just thinking about how unfair things feel in the current world and how it feels like the system's like really set up for wealthy elites and political elites, and ultimately what can I do about it? I'm just one individual person. It's a shitty feeling. I don't have people to talk to about this. I don't have that many friends anymore. Our social circles are shrinking. But I see this online thing, and everyone's gonna group up, and we're gonna go protest in the center of U of T's campus for Palestine, and we've never thought about this before in our lives, but I want to feel like I'm a part of something. I want to feel like I'm alive. I think that this is what it's all about. These people feel like they're alone, and you need a sense of community. But when it comes to Trudeau here and trying to get attention in a group of world leaders and sort of yelling out, like I don't have any idea about who's right in this war. It just seems kind of maybe comical to me, right? It seems odd that when all of a sudden we're like out of nowhere, something happens and we're blasted from all angles, all points of media, saying how we're supposed to feel about something. You got to put up your lawn sign, or don't put up your lawn sign, or don't go out and protest, or this is something you should be upset about. This is something you shouldn't. Stay inside for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We're told, like, everyone gets wrapped up in them, myself included, thinking that was a far bigger deal at the time than I think it turned out being in the end. Right? I think that event, like honestly, COVID probably made people more and more skeptical of what's going on in the world. And maybe everybody who's telling us things doesn't have our best interests at heart. But there's a lot of people I think that still aren't thinking that way. But all of this, like when we're blasted with the media, here's how you're supposed to feel about a given topic. It definitely makes me skeptical that maybe, just maybe, there's more reasons that we're doing something than what the news is telling us. And what I always look to is money, right? What I always look to is money, who stands to benefit, what individual people can benefit, what corporations can benefit because they're going to be able to increase their share value, making shareholders a little bit more happy with them. Squeezing out a little bit more margin. We can increase the dividend this year. We can increase our corporate payouts. And the CEO is going to get a bonus for sure. Like, you looking at who stands to benefit from these things, I think is more and more so how I'm analyzing the world. So we look at the Ukraine issue. Preface this again by saying I'm some idiot on the internet and I don't know what I'm talking about. But we hear the same sort of things on the media all the time. Here's how you're supposed to feel about something. And if you question how you're supposed to feel about it, then maybe you're not fit to be in social settings. Maybe grandma's not going to like you at the Thanksgiving table. But this is how it is. And there's two sides and two arguments on every single story. Like this is just from earlier this year, January 11th. I have another little clip here, and I'm going to describe it. This is a spokesperson for Russia. This is someone at the UN talking on Russia's behalf. Have you heard a lot of Russian people talking about this situation and the way that they're viewing it? I don't know if it's true what they say. I don't know if it's absolute bullshit that they're just trying to construct a narrative so that people who question things, maybe like me, will start to think about this other narrative and maybe doubt things more. And maybe that's the point. I don't know. But here's this clip. We've got the baldest man I've ever seen, and I'm thinning pretty hard, but I'm not there yet. This is at the United Nations. The headline of it, if you're just listening, is Kiev has sold Ukraine to BlackRock. This is Russia lambasts Ukraine for taking support from the U.S. And this leans into kind of the way that I start looking at things is, okay, where's the money? Who stands to benefit from these things? Maybe something started totally out of your control, but maybe you're, just like I was talking about before, never wasting a good disaster. Never waste a good disaster. And I think that thinking like this, this clip is going to be pretty interesting to you, because that talk about never wasting a good disaster, like think about the pandemic and pharmaceutical companies, right? Who stands to benefit the most from that? Who got all of these subsidies and all of these payments? And even if these vaccines weren't entirely fully tested, and even if they didn't work in the end and had bad side effects, well, these companies are immune and they still have their money that they were sold, and there's definitely shareholders in these pharmaceutical companies, and they really benefited from the way that things panned out, right? So even if it wasn't something that was planned or something that was just created out of thin air, never waste a good disaster. And I think that's the way that a lot of people think about these things that happen in the world. Now, some people think that never waste a good disaster, but also, hey, maybe we can create a disaster for which we will then not waste, right? So some people will go that far. I have no idea if things are manufactured. I don't know anything. But where there's possible profit, there's possible planning. I'll say that. But here to this clip with that in that context. Let me put my headphones on here so I can remember exactly what this guy is saying, because I just wrote this down. I thought that was kind of interesting. Never waste a good disaster. And here's how this ambassador for the U.S. or for Russia at the United Nations is framing things in Ukraine.
Clear hallmarks of totalitarianism. Ukraine's external debt grew to $132 billion in 2022. That's 89% of its GDP. Staggering amounts being given to Ukraine by the IMF, the EU, and Washington are pushing the country into a debt trap for decades to come. There is a company who wants to turn a profit in Ukraine, the US financial company BlackRock. And in fact, Kiev signed an agreement with BlackRock, launching a Ukrainian development fund. Under the guise of attracting private investment to the Ukrainian economy, what we're seeing is a transfer of state sovereignty to external corporate control by the world's largest investment fund. And it's worth noting that over the last decade, the number of the amount of arable land that was transferred to American agribusiness companies exceeded 4 million hectares. We hope that Ukrainians have at last understood that over the last 2 years they've been but a pawn in the confrontation between the West and Russia. Thank you.
So that's Russia's claims, right? He has quite the feminine voice, though, I noticed. For a guy that bald, that's a pretty high-pitched voice. It's also weird that his lips didn't match the English that was coming out. So don't know what was going on there. But it kind of falls into line with the never waste a good disaster situation, right? But he's going so far as to say, hey, this whole war is just like, well, Ukraine's just a pawn for the West, trying to gobble up good farmland. That's kind of what he says. But it seems also what he's saying here is, okay, there are American companies that have a lot of power and a lot of money and probably control to some extent, or at the very least lobby American politicians, and they could potentially benefit from a nation crumbling and doing well and funding a war that has like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young men dying. Is that true? I have no idea what the numbers are. There's got to be over 1,000. I told you I have no clue. Thousands of people dying, and we're funding this. Tens of thousands. It's got to be tens of thousands. Got to be. What's the toll? Companies that could benefit from needing to rebuild public infrastructure, or infrastructure that was previously public and now it's gone. We don't have any public funds anymore. We've taken on all this debt to fund this war, so now this country is in a bad position. Maybe this is what Zelensky's thinking, and well, we got to take in a lot of private investment here to rebuild things eventually. A company could stand to benefit by being the one that privately invests in the creation and the rebuilding of that infrastructure, not to mention some of the best farmland in the entire world, right? Now, I'm not saying I believe this. I have no clue. I'm not someone who is going to watch a podcast and is going to decide that I actually know what I'm talking about. But looking at it through the lens of never waste a good disaster, who stands to benefit financially? Like, does Ukraine stand to benefit from not coming to some sort of peace agreement here early on, like when this first started? Not really. They probably benefit from finding peace early on, right? But certainly a company that would be able to invest in rebuilding public infrastructure privately, that would help the shareholders, help the CEOs. They could say, we're investing in this country because we want to attract more external and we're trying to support, and it's for the democratic good, and it's so that our block of Western countries can prosper and fight against an evil power. That's a really good way to sell something that could make you a lot of money, right? I sound like I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist, but you look at Iraq and all the stuff that happened post 9/11, right? We find out, okay, well, there actually wasn't, the people who were hijacking those planes actually weren't from these countries that were then invaded, and turns out there's a lot of oil and there's a lot of economic beneficial sort of area, right, in the places that we did go. That the West did go. I sound like I'm crazy talking about this situation now, but now looking back at what the U.S. government did post 9/11, I think that it sounds not as crazy to say, hey, maybe there was a mistake that was made there. And maybe that actually helped out some corporations, and maybe that helped out the war machine and Lockheed Martin and all of these corporations that maybe they're the ones actually calling the shots in the end, right? And we see similar things, right? Similar things with BlackRock as well. BlackRock creating I think this was in 2021, a climate finance partnership between BlackRock and several different governments, where BlackRock says, hey, we'll invest X $100 million in your green investment funds if you take public money, public tax dollars, and also invest it in these things, in these same sort of companies, same sort of places that we're investing in. Sure, that can be sold as, hey, we're trying to help the environment. We're investing in ways that are sustainable investing and green investing, and this is what we're doing, and we're saving the planet by doing so. But hey, also, if we can invest in something and then get the government to pile into that investment, probably better chance that our investment is going to turn out well in the end because of the extra funding. Or at very least, our positions in those companies, if they're publicly traded, will be boosted by all the governments getting in, and then we can eventually sell our shares and make a fucking killing. Like, this is the stuff I'm skeptical about. BlackRock, of course, is the same sort of giant mega corporation that's buying up a lot of single family homes all throughout the United States. There was even, I believe, some reports about Canadian properties being bought up by BlackRock as well. Rented out, and that's the assets that they're going to hold, and everyone's going to be a renter from a big corporation like that, because I think those big corporations maybe have a little more sway politically than we might believe. I wish BlackRock would buy my house right now. BlackRock, are you listening to me? Are you listening? I know you are. Don't you think that I don't know that you're listening to this podcast on this channel that has 100 subscribers? BlackRock, I know you're listening to every word. Come by my house, I dare you. Come by my house. It's eco-friendly. You can support the rebuilding of the infrastructure in my house as the mice gnaw at the wires of my electrical setup. I know you're listening. Come by my house, BlackRock. Come by my house. But companies are going to take advantage of these things that can make them a lot of money. And companies are ultimately run by individual people, right? I think there's a lot of people who feign altruism. They'll say, I'm doing this because I am a good person and I am this type of person to do this, when actually there's some other ways that they could stand to benefit, be it the gain of power, be it the gain of money, right? Right now there's the climate minister. What's the environmental minister of Canada? Stephen Guilbeault was a former climate activist, right? Climbed the CN Tower or something like that, and like lowered a flag and got arrested for his climate activism. Stephen Guilbeault he was like cultural minister before he was environmental minister now. Sort of has been made an enemy by a lot of sort of more right-leaning Canadians. Now, I don't know much about the guy, but we're hearing in the news, it's coming out that he owns a bunch of shares in a green investment fund company. Owns a bunch of shares in a green investment fund company, can say, hey, I'm a climate activist. This makes sense for how I would invest. But also that same company ended up receiving around like $200 million in grants from the federal government. Turns out, Guilbeault, that was a pretty good investment. Now, I'm not saying that there was a link between that company getting the grants and Guilbeault being invested in it. I don't know that. I don't see any evidence of that. But you can't blame the population for being a little bit skeptical of when they see things like that, right? $200 million of public funds going to a company that the environmental minister has big holdings in, right? This is what we're seeing. Stephen Guilbeault, buy my house, buy my mouse. Would you with a fox? Would you in a box? Would you in my house? Would you with a mouse? Stephen Guilbeault. This is what I wonder. This is what I spend my time on my back on the floor. Would Stephen Guilbeault be doing this? Probably not. He'd be buying more shares in a company that the government was going to then invest in. That's probably what would likely be going on. Oh boy. Yeah, this is people want to feel like they're part of something. People want to feel like they're part of something and like they're not alone on this earth. And I think that there's a lot of fashionable worldviews that arise from that. We also been talking a lot about on these shows the interference that has gone on, right? We talk about it from a bunch of different states. Most recently, talking mostly about China and how far up there might be some sort of financial ties to some of our most influential Canadians. and some of our most influential media figures, media CEOs. All of this stuff is crazy. All this stuff is wild. And we recently had the Prime Minister come out and say, well, actually, the leader of the NDP and the leader of the Green Party who are saying, oh, I think we just lost video, folks. We just lost video. Put a pin in it. Gonna stitch these together. You just got a black screen right now. That might be kind of soothing after just staring at my mug for a minute. Let me get this sorted out. We're back. My camera decided it didn't want to listen to me anymore. Did not want to listen to me ramble on. And if you've listened to me for 40 minutes, you are a better man than my camera. You are a better man, woman. Him, they, she, him. You're a better person than my camera is. 'Cause you get it. You get me. We're just hanging out and we're just chatting, just talking shit. But where was I? We're talking about interference and how now the Prime Minister is saying, actually, well, we can't really trust NSICOP and this National Security Committee of parliamentarians who put together this report. We can't really trust them because every individual piece of intelligence from CSIS, Canada Security Agency, well, they're all just pieces of the puzzle, and we can never trust that the puzzle is being put together in the right way. So to make any allegations from these pieces of intelligence is irresponsible, right? Let's put this on something that let's not release any names, and we've got someone doing an inquiry right now, Justice Hogue, I think it is. Hug, maybe it's a little bit French. Hug. She's already looking at it. Let's just put it there and she'll take a look at what's going on here. How much interference was there really? We don't know. It's going to take her like 4 or 5 months to figure it out. Canada's going to move on. We're not going to have to think about it. We don't want to put the puzzle together too prematurely and say anything or allege anything that could harm us, right? Or could harm those individuals, because it's just, every piece of national security intelligence is just a little piece of the puzzle, and we can't know for sure that all those edges are good. Like we don't even know if we started with the edges and worked towards the center, grouping like pieces of puzzles together and then different color profiles. That's the strategy. That's the strategy if you didn't know. We don't even know if it's put together in the right way. This is what the Prime Minister is saying. So don't trust this national security sort of oversight committee to oversee that national security, especially when it looks bad on the government. Don't trust them then, because the puzzle could be put together in a wrong way. This is really, really interesting to hear after that same Prime Minister came out maybe just, what was it, maybe about a year ago, maybe 10 months ago, came out on a national stage in front of the world saying, we have credible allegations. We know that the Indian government was involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. They backed the murder of Nijar. Nijar was his name. That was his last name, I believe. This Indian citizen, who the government said was an activist, right, was killed by the Indian government, or a proxy for the Indian government. This is what Trudeau said, standing up in the House of Commons, and was featured on many, many clips, and I covered it at the time. And the Prime Minister of India wasn't too fond of those statements. Prime Minister Modi, who just recently won another term, wasn't too fond of those statements. The Indian government said, hey, we don't have any involvement in this. And they even said, it's against government policy to do that. Yeah, I'd hope that killing a person in another country's territory as a sovereign national government, I would hope so. I hope that's against government policy. I hope that's kind of goes without saying. These allegations are saying that you may have broke your policy. Policy doesn't mean that you're never going to do it. But the Indian government comes out and says, there's no way that we would have done this. There's no, let's not act like there's a chance that a government would do something like this. We've seen it before. Countries are interfering with each other left and right. And I think it's, like I said, usually tied to money and those types of things with politicians as figureheads, and they're probably not the ones actually pulling the strings. Like, I doubt Modi actually said, let's do this. But Trudeau comes up and says, the Indian government, we have enough intelligence to name the Indian government and to strain relationships with this country. We have enough intelligence to do that. It could have national consequences, but I'm going to stand up in the House of Commons and say this. Which doesn't make sense to me when you say, okay, we can't believe anything that comes from national security intelligence because they're all just pieces of the puzzle that we're going to put together. But somehow you knew that your puzzle was put together in the right way when it came to that situation. Going to stand up and accuse the Indian government of killing a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil in Vancouver. Of course, this is all part of this big issue in India and the Khalistani movement. There's a sort of region of northern India that they say they have claim to. Everything's about land, right? Everything's about we deserve a sovereign state. You look at Israel, Palestine, that whole thing, and we believe we have a right to this land. This is our spot. This is not your spot. This is what's happening in India too, and this is why there's so much conflict there, right? Because the Khalistani separatists, these people that say we have right to this state, right? And some people will call them activists. People in India right now mostly are calling them terrorists, right? Depends on which lens you look through. Right? But they're saying that this Khalistani leader was killed in Canada and it was the Indian government that did so. And Trudeau stood up in the House of Commons and said this about 10 months ago. So you'll forgive me if I feel like this is a little bit hypocritical. You'll forgive me if it makes not a lot of sense to me. Right? That in some instances, we can trust national security intelligence when it is beneficial to the people who want that national security intelligence to be known for whatever reason, but don't trust them other times when it might look bad on you, right? This is the frustrating thing. He says there's a difference between evidence and intelligence. Intelligence, these are just pieces of the puzzle. Evidence, that's something we know for sure. Right? All of this is just so frustrating, whether it's India or whether it's China or whether it's Iran or whether whoever's trying to interfere in Canada or across the world, everybody's doing it. I hate to break it to you, Canada's probably doing the same in 10 other countries. Maybe less so Canada, more the United States is taking a lead role in this one. Canada might be like best supporting actress in this one. Definitely not the lead in the play. Runs up to the director's door and sees I'm ensemble. I'm ensemble in this one when it comes to meddling in foreign states, tiny Canada. But let's not act like this isn't happening everywhere. But it's so frustrating because you see like when there's so much ambiguity of intelligence, right? These little pieces of evidence or these little ideas that the national security apparatus is putting on our plates, well, you can't know any of it. You swine, you serfs, you peasants can't know any of this intelligence because it would compromise our national security if we were to tell Canadians. Probably Canadians wouldn't like it if they knew the truth about a lot of this stuff, and maybe more people would start thinking and getting frustrated in the way that you can tell I'm getting by making these shows. But we can't see it. Everything gets handled behind closed doors and only behind closed doors. And politicians can say whatever serves them in the moment. Either we can trust that or we can't trust that, depending on what helps them the most. Right? This is what we're seeing. And this is frustrating. But even if we did have all of this information about the crimes that are going on in Canada, all of these issues, even if we did have them as a public, do we really think that a lot would be done about it? Let's look at, there's no arguing that Canada is a hotbed for money laundering in the world. A hotbed for maybe washing illegitimate money, be it in Canada's real estate markets or Canada's casinos, through cash transactions. Canada is a pretty okay place to launder money, right? I don't think that this is something that people would argue with. We have a problem with dirty money in Canada being washed here in Canada, right? We know that. And even though we know that, I don't think that a lot is being done about it. I just heard this. Have you ever heard of FinTrack? I'm not going to attempt the acronym off the top of my head, what it stands for. I think it's that financial intelligence sort of tracking. FinTrack is basically this system that gathers all kinds of information about suspicious transactions at banks, or in real estate transactions. This is something I had to do FinTrack reporting, and still do when I do real estate deals every now and then. This is something that you have to do. You have to fill out this paperwork. Casinos, every time there's a transaction above $10,000, and in a lot of other industries, well, hey, we got to flag this as potentially suspicious. But I just found out that in March, the whole FinTrack system went down. All of this apparatus to be able to track this potentially suspicious money and the use of it went down in March. They found out somebody got inside of their database. You can look this up, and they shut FinTrack down. They said, there's somebody that we can't trust who's inside of our databases, and so we're going to shut it down. And then the news moves on, go forward. You figure, okay, they must have put it back up, and they're keeping track of this stuff, and it's all, they got it under control. I find out like maybe 5 days ago, FinTrack has been down this entire time. Potentially hundreds of thousands of suspicious and fraudulent transactions have gone through and have not been reported because the system just simply hasn't been up. Right? It's mind-blowing, sure. Doesn't make sense that that something that is sort of supposed to be tracking illegal money laundering in Canada would be down for so long. Doesn't make sense. But even if FinTrack was up, I don't think it matters anyways. We've already seen all of this happening. The government puts in these kind of systems and these kinds of checks and balances that they know ultimately won't do anything, so that they can give lip service to how good they've been on an issue without actually changing anything. We're seeing with NSICOP, the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, and Trudeau saying, here's when we can trust them. We actually can't trust them for this one. Like, nobody can see what the report actually says. Everything's done behind closed doors. But because it was the Liberal government that brought in that national security watchdog or overview committee, you can say, well, we were actually the best on foreign interference. We've actually done the most out of any party, even though these systems are kind of a sham and you can't really do anything with the things that they do. I think it's the same sort of thing with FinTrack. Even if it wasn't down for 3 months, doesn't matter anyways. These FinTrack things, the suspicious ones, the worst ones, get reported to the RCMP. But it seems to me that either the RCMP doesn't have enough resources, or doesn't have the interest maybe, or maybe perhaps it goes higher and there's some sort of incentive or disincentive against like something bad coming out about somebody. Maybe there's some incentive not to actually look into this money laundering stuff and these suspicious transactions, because it turns out that most FinTrack suspicious transactions don't get investigated. We have this whole system and it's not really being used. It's not really being used. It's not really resulting in anything. And that leads to another thing that just came out in the news this week. Did you hear about this? I saved the fun stuff for last. The fun stuff. The double homicide, suicide. Saving that for last, because when you have systems that don't actually take care of things, especially white collar crime, this money laundering and white collar fraud, we have a whole system that's supposed to be set up to stop this stuff from happening, but it's not really used, and it ends up with people taking things into their own hands. Ends up with very, very bad things happening. Did you hear about this? There was a mortgage fraudster. Let me see if I can actually get out of this screen so I can take a look at this. That's the sound from the previous clip. at exactly what happened here. Here's the headline. Gunman in Toronto was shooting was not evil, but broken by fraud dispute. This is from his wife. This is the story. There's a fraudster, over $100 million in fraud, they say. Let me pull this up because I have a good thread here from Ron Butler. There we go. So the story is this guy is a mortgage con artist leading back since 2000. Ron Butler's saying here, he was bankrupt, but chose never to be discharged from bankruptcy. So he was permanently in a bankrupt state and judgment proof. But he kept on ripping people off. A phony import and export company ripping $3 million off people in 2000. Got charged, but the charges were dropped. The system didn't actually work out in catching this guy. Whole police forces knew about him and had different names for their operations trying to nab this guy. None of it happens. Multiple lawsuits. None of it takes this guy down. Over $100 million over 25 years. The justice system failed to stop this guy from defrauding people. Oh. That was something. And it leads to people taking things into their own hands, or maybe not. Depends. This is very sad, of course. I'm not trying to make light of this situation, but this Misagi, I think is his last name, this mortgage fraudster, ends up having one of the people that he defrauded of that person's life savings find him in person, take him out himself, along with his partner that was there, partner in this fraud, I believe. And then the person, the shooter, takes his own life. It's sad. I think it's part of a bigger story, though. I think it's part of a bigger story where there's systems that are in place for a reason, or for a stated reason. We're going to help people. Justice will be served. The right thing that should happen is what will end up happening because we've put things in the right place. The right people are in charge to take care of this stuff and to make sure that that all's well that ends well and everything's going to be fine because the system's there. But if you've watched all 3 of these episodes so far, you'll know it's a theme. I think people are losing faith in the systems that they've trusted in for decades and decades and decades. I think that's a result of governments not taking these institutions seriously enough, or not taking people's criticisms of those systems seriously enough. Or maybe they know that they're degrading and eroding our trust in these systems and just don't care. Maybe that's because an international crime organization has a video of them in an underground casino doing something unsavory. Maybe it's that. Or maybe they're just making more money because the system's working in a certain way and they're actually there as politicians to protect the status quo. Keep the rich people who are currently rich. Maybe that's actually the job, and they don't care about people losing faith in democratic institutions, and they don't care about people losing faith in the central banks as they increase the wealth of people through money printing and quantitative easing. Like, I think that took a big hit. A lot of people are a lot less trusting. And to a lot of people, if you made it this far, probably not you. This probably isn't about you. But a lot of people will think that I sound like a conspiracy theorist or I got a couple screws loose. And I'm not going to argue with you. I think probably I do. That's what I was thinking on my back on the tile, like with my head and mouth shut earlier today. I've got a couple screws loose, perhaps. But I think there's a lot of people that think like this, and you're probably one of them if you've made it this way. I don't think that the systems are set up for people like me and you. And ultimately, I don't think there's really a way to fix them. As bad as that sounds, like, what are you going to do? I think they've already won. The people who are winning have won, and there's not much of a way around it. It's a sad thing to say, but you gotta, like, I talk about this stuff and I talk shit and make all the videos, but ultimately you just gotta, I think, play the game by the rules that are there. You can't, like, all this stuff is true. Systems are not set up to help you. They're set up to screw you in many cases. The politicians, I think, and corporations and the incentives of those people are what's to blame. But you in your individual life can't think I'm being screwed over and over again and have this victim mentality. It's true. We're all victims of this system, but that's not going to do you anything to just be frustrated about all the things I'm talking about. I think you got to play the game by the rules of the game that exist there as they are, right? You got to do what you can to protect you and your family, set yourself up for success in the future. And that doesn't mean doing nothing, feeling like a victim, and then grabbing onto some sort of social movement to make you feel like you're a part of something. I think it's playing the game by the rules that are here. And maybe that I sound like I'm blackpilling and saying all is lost. Don't try. That's not what I'm saying. Try to do good and try to live by your morals and do all of this. Of course. But if you're feeling like you're always the victim and you're feeling like, hey, Trudeau is the reason this country is screwed up, and when Poilievre's in, well, then that's when it's going to be my time to shine. I hate to break it to you. I don't think that much is going to change. You got to think about you, and you got to know that the only thing you can control is your actions and what you do in your life. And I think that right now the best way to do that is to play the game. This is why I'm always trying to lower my expenses, increase my income, invest as much as I can to own assets. There's lots of problems with that, right? They're not problems that I'm going to solve in this lifetime. Not problems I'm going to solve. The only problem I'm going to solve is these goddamn mice in my goddamn kitchen. I'm going to get the sealant I'm going to be elbow deep in corrosive sealant. It's going to make my arms bleed. I'm going to take care of what I can take care of. And even if that's one small mouse, one small step for mankind, there's something there. Even if that's just one small mouse, then I'm going to feel successful about that. I'm going to feel successful about doing what I got to do. You do what you got to do, folks. And we're going to leave it there. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. If you've made it this far, subscribe to the channel because there's going to be more stuff like this. Probably more. Watch me descend into madness. If nothing else, subscribe so you can see how off the deep end I end up. Because I think I'm wading in. Maybe I'm just in the kiddie pool right now. It could get a lot deeper. It could get a lot deeper. I could get neck deep. So even if you think I'm insane, follow me or watch me into madness. Don't follow if it's madness. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends if you enjoy the show. I'm going to do these more and more often. Check out the primary channel at Russell Matthews. This is the Russ Matthews Show that you're watching. I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.